Hello, welcome back to the series of guest lectures on YouTube, which explain some basic concepts in economics as well as banking, along with the policies associated with it and the impact of policies on Indian economy. My name is Shinshir Sindekar. I am working with BYK College of Commerce for teaching for this economics and banking for the last 23-24 years. So let us start with the today's topic. Today's topic is related with the banking and finance as well as money and monetary policy, as everyone is more related with the money, so everyone is interested in this topic. So with here I would like to explain that what do we mean by money monetary policy, how does it works. Before going to that, I will have to go with some basic concept that Indian economy is basically agro-based economy. It consists private and public sector, as well as we have a market economy, as well as we have controlled economy. Some part is owned by the government. So this is a basic structure about that Indian economy as such. Now coming to the next is as economy works, we have to understand the functions and working of the economy. There are two basic sectors. One is household and second is firms. So household provides four basic factors to the firms: land, labor, capital, and in this entrepreneurship. So in this way the household provides the factors of production to the firms, while in return firms provides wages, rents, interest and profits to the household. Through this earnings the household can purchase the commodities and services which are produced by the firms. So firms produces commodities and services and they sell it to the household, and household purchases from the firm. So in this way actually the this is a circular flow of economy which can be explained with the help of two sector economy. But do remember here that I have not used a concept of money here as such. So money is just a medium of exchange. Money is just medium of exchange, and it does not performs as an independent identity. So money is there because the land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship will get some returns in terms of money. So in money it's just an oil to an engine. When the economy functions in a smooth manner, it requires some oil for that engine, and that oil is nothing but the money. So basically this explains that. Now coming to the some more basic concepts. The first one is GDP, that is gross domestic product of that economy, what we are producing within the boundaries of our economy. Then GNI, gross national income, which includes imports and export also. Gross value added, at that point, at every point we are adding something value to the existing commodities. The cotton is converted into cloth, the cloth is converted into say ready-made garment. In this way the GVA is becoming more and more popular concept nowadays. Then GNP, gross national product. So whatever we are producing, as I have already said, that it shows something, imports, considers the imports and exports. Then per capita income, that is the total national income divided by the population, provides us the per capita income. And the most important part is inflation. So inflation means people have more money with themselves, or they are demanding more, but unfortunately or whatever, the supply is not adequate. So too much money chasing too few goods is nothing but an inflation. So this is a concept of basically it is related to money and money supply, because too much money chasing too few goods, so that reflects the inflation. And this last part is economic growth. So every country wants to make an economic growth in national income as well as in say output and income and employment and so on. So economic growth is possible with these areas. So I would like to simply say that what is the current GVA or gross domestic product of Indian economy. So one of that estimate shows that 1,45,000 1 crore 45 lakh 65,951 crores of rupees. Again I will repeat, in 2019-20 the value of GDP at constant prices, so when measured with the prices of 2011-12, it was 1 crore 45 lakh 65,951 crores. So in this way, this is the value of GDP. If we are going to measure the same concept with the help of current prices, then it may come 2 crore 3,39,849 crore. So if we are going to measure that GDP with the current prices, it is definitely more. So and it appears to be 2 crores 3,39,849 rupees. So this is our GDP, and so these are the basic concepts of GDP or GVA. If we compare it with the last year, so naturally it will be less, and we want to achieve higher and higher economic growth rate. So these are some basic concepts before going to our uh, next slides. So what are the objectives of every economy? The objectives, whatever the economy may be, so they want to achieve higher economic growth. So the picture shows the population. So population is interested to increase their economic growth. They want to increase their standard of living, and along with they would like to reduce their poverty, inequalities in the distribution and distribution of income and wealth. They want to increase their income levels. They want to increase the employment. Even the government is also interested to increase all these things, and they would like to reduce the poverty. So who are actually the contributors to this national income? Agricultural sector, industrial sector, services sector. So in each of that sector there must be growth. So how this growth is possible? Growth is possible only with the money and money supply. So that's why we are more interested in money and money supply. So along with that, to achieve these objectives, we have different types of policies. One is fiscal policy. So in every month, every year, the government of India, the central government, state government, as well as local governments declares their budget. So that budget is a part and part of that fiscal policy. Fiscal policy means the policy which deals with fisc or treasury, or the government, how the government earns the revenue, how the government spends the revenue. So this is related to that economic concepts, economic policies. Then second is monetary policy, in which today we are interested. So how the money and money supply is controlled, that is the most important part, and that is controlled by the central bank of the country. In India we have Reserve Bank of India controls this monetary policy. Along with that, there are some agricultural policies, industrial policy, or service sectors. So every sector needs a separate policy. So that is actually the policies. Along with foreign exchange, foreign trade, that policies may help us to achieve higher economic growth rates. So in this way we have different policies, and today we are more and mostly interested in monetary policy. So this was the introductory part or background of where we want to achieve. Now this is an interesting slide which shows the important symbols of money and money supply in Indian economy, at least, or in Vedic Dharma or Hindu Dharma. Here you can observe the statue of Kubera, and that is not only existing in India, but it appears in some other countries, maybe in China as well as in Thailand, Malaysia. So you will observe these statues of Kubera, Lord Kubera, who is known for the god of that money as such. And it is also, if you go with that mantra, if you chant that mantra, it has been said that you can have more and more wealth. So this is an interesting story. So but that is not the today's part of lecture. Now coming to the next and most important part, what is money and monetary policy as such? Mudra and Mudra Dhoran. So here you will observe a standard note of rupees 1000, but unfortunately it is not nowadays available. So what is that supply of money means? So let us come back to the most important part. The first one is currency, notes and coins created by the Reserve Bank of India. Money, supply of money, currency, notes and coins. And second part is credit money, which is created by commercial banks. So what is the basic difference between money and money supply, and what is the principle behind the printing of currency, notes and coins? So here I would like to explain in very few words that central government will have to keep a reserves of rupees 200 crores. Central government will have to keep a reserves of rupees 200 crores with the Reserve Bank of India nowadays, and out of that 200 crores, 115 crores in terms of gold, and remaining 85 crores in terms of RBI approved securities. It may include 1 rupee as well as some foreign exchange reserves also, or it may include say securities approved by the RBI. So against this 200 crores of reserves, the RBI can print any number of notes to any denomination. So this is the current practice of uh, printing of currency notes and coins. To remember that this is called as inconvertible paper currency, which cannot be converted into gold because we have reserves of rupees 200 crores only. So this is the part of currency notes and coins created by the Reserve Bank of India. Along with that, there is another part which is known as credit money, which is created by commercial, cooperative and other types of banks. So this is most important contributor to the total supply of money. So supply of money consists two parts, notes and coins, and second is credit money. Okay, now what is monetary policy? So till this point we have known something about the money as such. So what is the monetary policy? It is the policy which deals with money and money supply. How much quantity of money to be created to run this economy? Just now I have said that money plays only the part which can work as a engine for that oil. If that engine consists number of different gears, and to run those gears smoothly we need an oil. So that oil is nothing but the money. So how much quantity of money to be supplied in economy is decided by this monetary policy, and this is the most important part is conducted, organized, designed, implemented by the Reserve Bank of India for Indian economy, and for American economy it is the Federal Reserves. Okay, now what is money as such? I would like to say, can we call this pen as a money? If everyone is ready to accept this pen as a money, if everyone is ready to accept this chalk or pen as a money, then would you like to accept it? This is a critical question, that everyone is ready to accept this pen as a money, then what is the problem in that? So naturally, the simplest definition of money, it is anything which is generally acceptable to pay, to exchange the commodities and services. So anything which is generally acceptable is called as money. It is not necessary that it must be a rupee note or coin or like that. Previously, why we do not have any type of money as such. We were just a barter system of exchange. So we exchange the goods and commodities with goods and commodities and services. So there was no existence of money. So nowadays we have accepted money, maybe a paper. It is simply a paper, nothing more than that. So anything which is generally acceptable as a to settle our payments or to pay back the dates is nothing but the money. So this is an idea behind that concept of money. Now what are the functions of money? What are the functions of money? Okay, so the first function is medium of exchange. Yes. Second thing, unit of account. So I can exchange the good with good, or I can exchange good with commodity, or I can exchange commodity with service. So it is a medium of exchange. Second is unit of account. So I can measure any commodity in terms of money. In terms of money, I can actually measure the commodity. So unit of account. Store of value. Yes, I cannot store, if I am going to use perishable commodity like vegetables or milk, then I cannot store it, but money can be stored. So this is an added advantage over the barter's economy. Store of value is another function of money. Then standard of deferred payments. So I have taken a loan from someone else and I want to pay it later on, so I can use the money. So standard of deferred payments can also be, the money can also be used for the same thing. So unit of account, store of value, medium of exchange and standard of deferred payments are the basic functions of money. So we have understood what do we mean by money, anything which is generally acceptable, functions of money. So these are the functions of money. Then what type of currency notes we do have. So let me explain you. Have you ever observed three different or two different types of notes. Here we have shown 1 rupee note, there we have shown 2 rupee note, and at the bottom we have shown 1000 rupee note, which is not existing but assume it. So what is the basic difference between that? If you go through that, you will find out 1 rupee note is signed by the finance secretary of the government of India, and on the top of the 1 rupee note, what is written? The government of India. While note which starts from denomination rupees 2 and onwards, you will find out Reserve Bank of India. On the top of that note, currency note, what is written? Reserve Bank of India. And below that, what is said? I promise to pay the sum of rupees so and so. मैं धारक को 2 रुपये, 10 रुपये, 1000 रुपये देने का वचन अदा करता हूँ. मैं धारक को वचन अदा कर, I promise to pay. So whenever we exchange the note, this currency note, we are not exchanging the money, but we simply promise him to pay that money, but which we never pay. Even if you take this note to the governor, which is signed by the governor of the Reserve Bank of India, he will not exchange it with gold, but he will exchange it with some other currency. Why? It is simply because, which I have already stated, that the principle behind the printing of currency notes and coins is inconvertible paper currency. That means the RBI maintains the reserves of rupees 200 crores, and against that reserves of 200 crores, out of which 115 crores in terms of gold and remaining 85 crores in terms of rupee approved or RBI approved securities. So against that 200 crores, RBI can print any number of notes to any quantity and any denomination. There is no ceiling on that. The RBI can print any number of notes of any denomination and there is no ceiling on that. So the responsibility of rupees 2 and above lies with the Reserve Bank of India, and up to 1 rupee. It is not mentioned that मैं धारक को 1 रुपया अदा करने का वचन देता हूँ. It is not mentioned on 1 rupee note, but which is owned by the government of India, although distributed and issued by the Reserve Bank of India. I know that. Here I would like to mention one more interesting thing. Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was finance secretary once upon a time, So you will observe the signature of Dr. Manmohan Singh on 1 rupee note. Later on he became governor of Reserve Bank of India. So you will observe the sign of Dr. Manmohan Singh on above notes also, 2 rupees and above notes also. Later on he became the finance minister and then he became the prime minister also. So he is the only person. Okay, coming back to this area of our interest. So these are the types of notes, and as I have just now said, that is inconvertibility of this paper currency. So everything works on my belief. I do believe that this government is the best government, whatever. So they can issue the currency notes, and I do believe. If I do not believe in this currency, naturally I will shift to some other assets. Okay. Now coming to the more interesting part, that what is the current situation of the currency notes and coins. So before that, I would like to explain the basic concepts of money measures, how the Reserve Bank of India defined these money. So originally it was defined by Radcliffe Committee, then Dr. Y.V. Reddy Committee submitted their report, and nowadays we are observing the definitions provided by this Dr. Y.V. Reddy Committee report, previously the Deputy and Governor of Reserve Bank of India. So he defined money in 4 aspects: M0, M1, M2, M3, M4, and there are some other also L1, L2. So right now I would like to concentrate, what do we mean by M0? M0 means the currency notes and coins. Yes, how much quantity of notes, currency, coins exist in this economy is known as M0. What is the currency in circulation? M1 means when a normal customer deposit his money into current account, which can be withdrawable at any point of time, so it is almost as liquid. So according to the levels of liquidity, this money measures were defined. What is M2? M2 includes the M1, that is the currency with the public, plus demand deposits, plus post office saving deposits, that is M2. Previously, banks were not spread in all over India, so post offices were working as a bank. So the importance of post offices was much more during the older period. So M2 includes the M1 plus post office savings. What is M3? So M1 is called as a narrow definition of money, while M3 is called as broad definition of money. So what it includes, when people keep their money in say maturity or in fixed deposits or in saving deposits of different maturities, then it is included. So all those types of deposits are included in M3. So what is M3? M3 is nothing but M1 plus M1 means currency notes, coins with the publics, plus demand deposits or current account deposits with the public, plus time deposits with the public are included in M3. So commercial banks, reserve banks, industry, government, everyone is interested to know how much liquidity is flowing in the economy, how much M3 is existing in the economy. So that is the most important part. And M4 includes naturally M3 plus post offices saving deposits, and this actually considers only the banking part. So if we include financial institution, then we can have some other definitions, L1, L2 and so on. So these are the basic money measures as defined by Dr. Y.V. Reddy Committee's report and published by the Reserve Bank of India and accepted by this Indian economy. Okay, now coming to one interesting story about the notes, coins. So just for an interest, I have collected this data. So if we find out how many notes of rupees 2 and 5 exist in this Indian economy on in December 2020, then I have observed that the volume in lakhs of pieces is 1,12,203. That is 10% of total currency notes are in the form of rupees 2 and 5. 26% is the volume of lakhs of pieces in say rupees 10. 3,04,022 pieces. 3,04,022 lakhs of pieces existing for rupees 10. Then coming to the 100 rupee notes. 100 rupee notes are the most popular notes which we are using. So how many quantities, how much quantity or lakhs of pieces are available for 100 rupees? 1,99,021 pieces are available. If we convert it into its value, it is shown on the right hand side. Then coming to the 500 rupees notes. So 500 rupee notes are mostly popular after say demonetization. So 2,94,475 pieces are lakhs of pieces are existing in Indian economy in December 2020. Again the data published by the Reserve Bank of India. And the 2,000 rupee notes, the total volume is just 27,398 lakhs of pieces are available of rupees 2,000. So comparing that, you will observe that 25% of the currency volume is in the form of rupees 500, 26% is in the form of 10 rupees. Or if I come back to the value in crores, I will find out 60% of the currency is existing in rupees 500 notes. I have collected some more data about it, and that is just in the month of January, RBI has shown again an interest to reduce the volume, to change the 100 rupee notes to the newer notes also. So how they are changing it? So I must say, in 2018, the volume, the total volume is 100. Assume that total volume of all the denomination of note was 100. Then rupees 100 note were 21.7%, and which has gone down to 17.2% in this 2020. Similarly, the value or the volume of rupees 500 notes has been increased from 15% to 25%. Imagine that people are using more, or they are demanding more notes of rupees 500 than rupees 100, and it has, the volume has been increased from 15% to 25%. And the most problematic part which I feel, that the volume of rupees 2000 note has been declined, which was very small in 2018, 3.3% of the total volume in lakhs of pieces, but it has gone down to 2.4% in the 2020. So that can be an indication that the volume of 2000 note is shrinking. The volume of rupees 500 notes is increasing. So this may trigger you to think something more about it. I do not want to comment on that because the listeners are expert in this field, so they can imagine that what will happen to rupees 2000 note, what will happen to rupees 500 note, and what will happen in future. Okay, so let me come back to our basic idea, that the total currency available, again the data collected on January 1st of 2020-21, disclosed by the Reserve Bank of India, the total currency notes and coins were of 26,74,707 crores of rupees. 26 lakh crores of rupees. This is the total value of M0, that is the currency notes and coins. But as I already said, that along with the deposits, if we consider all the time deposits, saving deposits, all types of deposits, then considering that, I can come to the next idea, that on, say, the deposits were 1 crore 55 lakh 83,235 crore, 1 crore 55 lakh 83,235 crores of rupees were in the form of deposits, and M3 is nothing but the addition of both them, currency and the total deposits. So that comes to the 1 crore 83 lakh 352 crores of rupees. So this is the total value, 1 crore 83 lakh 352 is the total value of currency, deposits and money supply in the economy. As I already said, M3 is the most important determinant. M3 is the most important determinant of money supply. Now again, keep one thing in mind, that why we want to learn such basic things. It is simply the supply of money determines the inflation. Too much money chasing to too few goods. So if we are enlarging M3, then naturally more the money and the commodities are not available in the market, it will lead to inflation, and inflation can be dangerous to a common man whose incomes are not increasing with the inflation. So just now I have said that currency is created by notes and coins created by the Reserve Bank of India, and the second part, which is more important, that is the credit money, which is created by the commercial banks. My today's topic is not actually related with the creation of credit supply, but I can simply say that if you as a customer, if you as a depositor, if you deposit 100 rupees with a bank, if you deposit rupees 100 with any commercial bank, then the commercial bank creates a credit of rupees 700 and 800. They create this much supply of money. They create money without printing any currency note. So whenever RBI prints 100 rupee note, on that basis, if it is converted into credit, if it is used by the commercial banks, if it is used by a common man, and if he deposit that amount with the commercial bank, then the commercial bank can create a excess credit supply from that. So with it depends on what is my withdrawal tendency from the bank, whether the economy is growing and they demand the loans from the bank. So in this way, the RBI creates money, that is notes and coins, but on that basis commercial bank creates much more money supply without printing notes, but they print demand drafts, they print say other mediums which can be used as a money. So nowadays all electronic forms of monies are available, so there is no need of currency notes and coins. But this credit money increases as the money supply, so that leads to more supply with the public, and people have more money, they can demand more, and when they demand more, the producers would like to produce more. If the producers produces more, that will increase the income, that will increase the employment, that will increase that will reduce their poverty, and so on. So supply of money determines volume of money. Notes and coins, volume of credit supply actually determines the economic growth rate of that economy. So that's why the role of banks is most important, critical for the growth of the economy. So what are the policies of monetary, what are the objectives of monetary policy? The first thing, it should provide sufficient amount of credit to those who want that credit. Maybe agricultural sector, maybe industry or services sector, everyone demands the money for to if they have a capital, they can invest, they can start their factories, and through this factories they can create employment. So employment generation is an important objective, but that employment should reach to the full employment. So that means everyone should get an employment. This should be, and in this way the money supply must be created. But at the same time, non-inflationary level of output. So if you are just going to supply money, and if it is not converted into the output, then it will create inflation. What I want to say, too much money chasing too few goods. If the banks provide sufficient, if the banks provides excessive money supply, people will have more money, they will demand more, and if they demand more and if the supply is not sufficient, then only the price will rise. So price must be controlled. Price must be controlled. At the same time, sufficient amount of money should be supplied in the economy. They should not, the RBI as well as commercial banks should not provide excessive loans, should not provide lower loans. So in this way, non-inflationary level of total output and achievement of full employment are some of the objectives of monetary. So how they can control that money supply, that is an interesting part. How they can control the money supply. So there are two parts. The first one is quantitative credit control instruments. So if there is an excessive inflation, then naturally RBI can reduce the money supply. Or if there is a recession, nowadays we are observing pandemic situation, COVID. As a result, the companies are not producing, there is no demand in the market. So during this period, RBI increases the liquidity and money supply. RBI increases the money supply either through printing more notes and coins, as well as provide or encouraging commercial banks to provide more and more credits. So in the both ways, the RBI can control the credit supply. Which instruments they are using? The first one is bank rate. There are two types of instrument. Right now I am considering quantitative, which directly controls the credit supply in quantitatively. The first one is bank rate. So what is that bank rate? So in simple word I can say, whenever a commercial bank wants to have a loan from the RBI, whenever a commercial bank wants to have a loan from the RBI, they can approach the RBI and they can demand the loan, and the rate of interest charged by that RBI is nothing but the bank rate. This is a simple definition. If you are a student of banking, if you want to learn something more, then I would like to say the bank rate is a rediscounting rate. Bank rate is a rediscounting rate charged by the Reserve Bank of India on the bills provided by the commercial banks for rediscounting purposes to have temporary loans or advances from the RBI. It sounds somewhat difficult, but it's not that much difficult. Whenever commercial bank provide loans to their customers, whenever commercial bank provides advances and loans to their customer, they actually keeps their commercial bills. So a shopkeeper can provide a bill to the commercial bank. Now this bill, what is the mention on that bill? The bill is not a cash memo. A shopkeeper sell his good to the customer, but the customer is not, at that point customer is not ready to pay the cash. So here it has been said in that bill that the customer will pay that amount after 180 days or after 6 months, whatever it is mentioned. So actually the delivery challan has been provided to the customer, the commodity has been reached to the customer's house, it may be refrigerator or say TV or something else, and customer has agreed, the seller shopkeeper has also agreed that the customer will repay that amount after 180 days. And if suppose that the value of that TV is 10,000 rupees, so after 180 days the customer is ready to pay 12,000 rupees. But right now he need not have to pay anything to that shopkeeper. Now if the shopkeeper needs some money, he will go to the bank. He will go to the bank and he will say that I know that I'm going to get that money after 180 days, but right now I'm in badly need of the money, so please provide me some amount of money. So that commercial bank accept the bill and discount that bill, and from that 10,000 the RBI is ready to pay him 9,000 rupees. Now the commercial bank is in the possession of that bill, but if that commercial bank needs money badly, then that commercial bank can take that bill to the RBI and rediscounting, and that bank rate is nothing but that rediscounting rate. And currently in the month of December 2020, it is 4.25% as declared by the Reserve Bank of India. This was an old traditional instrument used by the RBI. Nowadays RBI using some other instruments known as the repo rate. I will come back to that later on. So this is one of that quantitative instruments. So if that bank rate is increased, naturally commercial bank will not approach to the RBI. So the control of credit is possible with increase in bank rate, or decrease in bank rate will encourage the commercial bank to take a loan from the RBI and they can provide more loans to their customers. Second is various reserve requirements. Which are those requirements? One of that is cash reserve ratio, and second is statutory liquidity ratio. What is that CRR means? So CRR means, cash reserve ratio means, whenever a commercial bank accept a fresh deposit from their customers, whenever a commercial bank accept a fresh deposit from their customers, they have to maintain some amount in terms of cash with RBI. Do remember that whenever a commercial bank accept a fresh deposit, and from that deposit some part in terms of cash must be maintained with the RBI, and that value is nothing but the cash reserve ratio. So if that CRR is increased, it is currently 3%. So let us imagine it is 15%. So whenever commercial bank, State Bank of India accept 100 rupees, they have to maintain 15 rupees with the RBI. So this naturally reduces the lendable resources with the State Bank of India or any commercial bank. So naturally they have to maintain 15 rupees with the RBI, and they can have only remaining 85 rupees with themselves to provide loans to their customers. So in this way, increase in CRR, increase in cash reserve ratio reduces the capacity of commercial banks to credit to provide more credits to their customer. The second is statutory liquidity ratio. Similarly, whenever a commercial bank accepts a fresh deposit, whenever a commercial bank accepts a fresh deposit, they have to maintain some amount. They have to maintain some amount with themselves in terms of cash, in terms of gold, in terms of rupee securities or RBI approved securities. What exactly it means? That whenever normal customer provides 100 rupees as a deposit with the bank, so 3 rupees or 15 rupees are already maintained with the RBI in terms of cash, but with the same bank they have to invest some amount in terms of cash, some amount in terms of gold, or in the form of RBI approved securities. As a result, that amount, that portion of the cash cannot be used to provide loans to their customers. So currently that ratio is 18%. So that means 18 rupees must be invested in gold, must be invested in cash or some other securities. In this way, if increase in SLR reduces the credit supply in the economy, increase in CRR, increase in SLR, increase in bank rate reduces the credit creation capacity of that bank. But nowadays we are observing a recession. So during this period, decrease in bank rate, decrease in CRR, decrease in SLR naturally leads to increase in credit supply in the economy. So we have observed a continuous decline in CRR as well as in SLR. I can remember during the older days, in the year 1991, the CRR plus SLR was up to 50%. So only 50 rupees were available with the commercial bank to provide loans. So how they can earn more interest on that, and how they can pay back interest on the depositors? So the profitability has gone down. So after Narasimhan Committee's recommendation, the CRR SLR have gone down in Indian economy. But even if we want to avoid recession, we have to reduce CRR and SLR. And the most popular and effective instrument is open market operations. I would like to explain that also. Repo rate is again one of the modern instrument. Repo is a short form of repossession. So the RBI sell the securities to the commercial banks. At the same time, they declare that at what rate they are selling and at what the rate they would like to repurchase it. So reverse repo rate is also an instrument used for that. Again, the same, it can be defined as the same as the bank rate, or say used regarding the securities. So the current rate of that repo rate is 4% declared in December 2020. So these are the quantitative credit control instruments which directly controls the quantity of the credit supply. Coming to the other areas, qualitative credit control or selective credit control instrument. So what exactly qualitative means? The first one is margin requirement. Whenever you want to have a loan, you demand a loan from the bank, then the bank will ask to keep this margin. If this margin requirement is increased, it discourages a customer to take a loan. Or the payback period is reduced. It was originally decided to provide loan for 3 years, but later on the government or the RBI as well as the commercial banks say, no, you will have to pay back within 1 year. Then naturally you will have to pay it earlier. That also reduces the credit supply, or that discourages a customer to take a loan. Increase in EMI will also lead to the same thing. Or if the RBI observes that there is a continuous growth in the prices of selective commodities, the prices of cement are increasing, prices of iron is increasing, prices of sugar is increasing, then naturally the RBI can send direct notification that don't provide loans against the stock of sugar, don't provide loans and advances against steel, don't provide loans to purchase the shares also. So in this way, the RBI can control it through directives. They can control, or they can ration it. When the supply is less, then rationing is required. So the RBI can say that don't provide loans against that or against this. Or in that case, if some banks are continuously providing loans for that purpose only, then RBI can take direct actions against them. RBI can directly cancel the licenses also. So there is another instrument, moral suasion. So which means a request can be, it is actually in the form of request. The RBI can request them that don't provide loans to these sectors. If you have seen the web series Scam, Harshad Mehta's Scam, During that period, RBI has requested the commercial banks as well as PMO office that there is a continuous rise in the prices of shares, so please don't provide loans against the shares. So that was a moral suasion which was not followed by the commercial banks, and they came in problem later on. Or RBI can publish it, this information. So in this way, these are what we can say qualitative or selective credit controls to arrest the inflation in specific commodities. So in this way, the RBI can control the credit supply. So we have observed, we have seen the quantitative as well as qualitative credit control instruments. Right now I am more interested to show some interesting how the monetary policy works specifically with open market operations. The Reserve Bank of India is continuously selling or purchasing the securities in the market. So just now I have said that if they want to control money supply in the economy, they want to control money supply? Excess money supply leads to inflation. So they want to reduce, they want to mop up that excess liquidity from the public or from the market. What they can do? They can sell their securities to the market. RBI can sell the securities or RBI can purchase those securities. Now here we have shown that let us assume that this is a pandemic situation. COVID-19 is affecting each and every sector. So people do not have money with themselves because they have lost the jobs, the companies shut down. So during this period, the RBI can buy the securities from the market. Buying the securities from the market. Okay, now RBI buy these securities from the commercial bank. Then what is going to happen? Bank will give these securities. Banks gives up that securities to the RBI. RBI pays to the bank in terms of cash. Now the more cash is available with the commercial bank. With that more cash, they can provide more loans to their customers. So banks have increased reserves with themselves if RBI purchases these securities from the public or from the banks. Similarly, RBI can directly purchase these securities from the public. Again, the public gives up the securities. In return, they may get the money in terms of check. Again, the checks can be deposited with the commercial banks. So commercial banks can create more money supply through the credit creation, and by selling the securities, the public can have more money with themselves. So during the COVID or pandemic situation or during the recession, the RBI can use this policy, that is purchasing. Now they can sell it. The securities can be sold to the public as well as commercial banks. Whenever RBI sell these securities to the banks, when RBI sell these securities to the banks, naturally bank can have more securities. That is a plain paper which is signed by the President of India for the Government of India, which says that we are ready, we will pay back your money after 180 days. So it is mentioned on that security. So that paper comes to the commercial banks from the RBI. In return, the excessive cash which was available with the commercial banks goes to the RBI. So in this mop up of excessive liquidity from the market to the banks happens here. People have more money, banks have more money, people can also purchase these securities from the RBI. So RBI sell these securities to the public. Public pays in terms of cash to the bank or checks to the bank. Now in this way, the banks have decreased reserves. So public pays by checks from bank, and banks can again deposit it with the RBI. So banks have decreased reserves. People do not have sufficient money. So in this way, the liquidity or excessive money supply can be controlled with the selling of these securities. So these are known as open market operations, that is a quantitative credit control instrument, reserve ratios, SLR, CRR, and the discount rate, or say just now we have said repo rate or bank rate. There are two types of policies exist in the money. One is easy money policy and second is tight money policy. Imagine that there is a lack or less supply of onions in the market. There is a less supply of onion in the market and demand is more, the price of onion will go up. Imagine supply is less, demand is more, price is going to more. Similarly, if the supply of onion is more and the demand is less, if the supply is more and demand is less, then naturally the price of onion will go down. The same thing happens in the money market also. The same thing happens in the money market also. If RBI increases the money supply, if RBI increases the money supply, the rate of interest goes down. And if public demands more money and supply of money is not sufficient, then the rate of interest, that is the price of money, goes up. Imagine that if you are visiting any hut or say weekend bazaars in typical village, have you ever observed that some person is carrying a bag of money which sells the money? Imagine a situation in a village bazaar where the sellers are selling their vegetables. Have you ever observed that one person is selling money to the public and this is something different? Yes, but the same thing happens that if you want to purchase a money, you approach us to the bank or money lender, and the price he charges is nothing but the rate of interest. So in this way, the money supply and rate of interest can be observed. If the supply of money is more, the price of money will go down, that is the rate of interest will go down. And if the supply of money is less, naturally the rate of interest, that is the price paid to purchase that money, will be more. So this is an idea about the supply of money which is solely controlled by the Reserve Bank of India. Now I am coming to the more and most important part of our lecture. How exactly the supply of money affects the economy itself. So monetary policy, real GDP, when it is measured in terms of commodities, that is the real GDP, and the price level, how they affect each other. The first one, money supply. Change in money supply changes the rate of interest. Money supply, the quantity of money, M1 and M3, changes the rate of interest. If they supply more, naturally rate of interest will go down. Imagine if they supply more money, then rate of interest will go down. Interest rate affect investment also. Definitely, if rate of interest is less, I would like to have more loans. So interest rate affect the investment. If interest rate is very high, I can't take a loan, and if I can't take a loan, I can't start my factory, I can't gear up the economy also. So money supply changes the rate of interest. Interest rate changes the investment levels. And what is investment? Investment is nothing but part of aggregate demand. Aggregate demand is nothing but C plus I plus G. So what is aggregate demand? Whatever the total demand in the economy. What is consists? I demand for my consumption purpose. I means investment and G means government expenditure. So in this way, the aggregate demand consists the investment which is controlled by rate of interest, and interest rate is controlled by the money supply. So you just observe the cause and effect relationship, and all these things together actually they change the demand and supply position, and they bring or they change the level of equilibrium in the economy. That means when the aggregate demand equates the aggregate supply, that is an equilibrium. But change in this money supply changes this equilibrium. How does it changes? That is also an interesting point that we want to find out. Who controls? The RBI, Reserve Bank of India, controls all that. Okay. Now here, this is an most interesting slide and of my presentation. Monetary policy and equilibrium of the economy as such. So the first graph which shows quantity of money demanded and supplied in the economy, which is shown on the horizontal OX axis. the first graph shows quantity of money demanded and supplied. Again, just now I have said that the Reserve Bank of India keeps the reserves of rupees 200 crores and they can print any number of notes. So this has nothing to do with the rate of interest. So this is interest inelastic, which is considered on y-axis. So on vertical y-axis, we can observe the interest rate I, and horizontal axis quantity of money is shown, demanded as well as supplied, and that is a constant. So it is vertically parallel line to the y-axis. So irrespective of change in interest, it produces this much amount of money through M1 and M3. Okay, let me come back. That demand and supply determines the equilibrium definitely. So demand is shown in the red line, which comes downward from left to right, and the supply is vertical, and supply and demand equates at that particular yellowish point. So at the rate of interest, when it is, for simplicity I have assumed that it is at 10% as a rate of interest. So at that rate of interest, the supply of money and demand for money equate. So that comes to my first point of equilibrium. Okay, with this level of rate of interest, there must be some demand for investment. So at 10% rate of interest, I would like to go to the bank, approach the bank to take a loan. So again, in the next graph, I have shown the amount of investment at the rate 10%, and here I got again one more investment demand point. So at this point is the level which shows the how much investment will take place in the economy, and at the bottom you will find out one more graph which shows aggregate supply and aggregate demand in the economy, total demand of this economy and total supply of this economy, and which equates at, say, that yellowish point, and where aggregate supply and aggregate demand equates each other, and that too at the price level P1. So with a given level of GDP, price level will be P1. Okay, now what RBI is doing, if the money supply has been increased, why they want to increase the money supply? Just now I have said that if we are observing recession, maybe because of COVID or other problems, we are observing recession. So we want to stimulate the economy. We want to provide more money supply. So they have increased the money supply, and the money supply, change in that money supply has been shown to the right hand side, and the new blue line has been established with the new money supply. Imagine more money supply, more supply of onion brings down the prices of onion. Similarly, more money supply brings down the prices of money, that is the rate of interest. It has gone down from 10% to 8%. Imagine if the rate of interest goes down. If the rate of interest goes down, I would like to go to the commercial banks. I would like to have more loans from them. So naturally, investment demand will increase. Have you observed it? That lowering that rate of interest just because of increasing the money supply, which has impacted the rate of interest to the lower side, and with the lower rate of interest, more demand for investment. Now naturally, more investment demand, what is going to happen in the real GDP? Investment increases, more investment, again more total supply. So aggregate supply will also increase. Aggregate demand, that also changes by a certain level. So aggregate demand has been established as a new red line. So people have more money because more investment is there. With that more money, they will demand more. As the demand is increasing, so naturally it will lead to increase in demand. So total shift in demand curve is observed here from that AD1 to AD2, aggregate demand 1 to aggregate demand 2. So people can demand more. Previously they were demanding only $15,000. Now they are demanding $20,000 commodities worth rupees $20,000, so that will increases the aggregate demand. But in the meantime, supply cannot be increased by that level. It will take time, but immediately supply cannot be increased. So on the same supply curve, supply is little bit increased, but the prices increases from P1 to P2. So price rise, again from where we have started increase in money supply, decrease in interest rate, increase in investment demand, increase in demand, but increase in demand increases the prices. So in this way, the supply of money can change the GDP, can change the price also. So this is actually explained with this help of graph. For further if the RBI is going to increase the supply, okay, again the rate of interest will go down. With the going down of that interest rate, there will be more demand for investment. More investment will again further lead to the aggregate demand from 81, 82 to 83 also. So in this way, there will be more aggregate demand and GDP increases with slight inflation. So if I want to increase the GDP, what is the ultimate idea of that monetary policy from where we have studied? What was the objective? Increase the GDP. Yes, how to increase the GDP? Increase the money supply. But does it really increases the output? Yes, it increases. If you go with this mathematics and say geometry or so this graphical representation, you can state that increase in money supply reduces the interest rate, increases the investment, increases the aggregate demand. So the monetary policy can effectively increase the gross domestic product, as well as I know that we have to accept some level of price. So I must say the inflation or rise in price is nothing but the price paid for the economic growth. So if I want to have more growth, I will have to accept the inflation. So again the same thing, that decrease in interest rate will increase the aggregate demand. So this completes my explanation regarding the money and monetary policy. I hope that the speed was somewhat more, but you must have understood what is the concept of money, what is the monetary policy, how does it what are the effects of that monetary policy, how that monetary policy works. So thank you very much for being with me, and thanks for the patience. So if you have any doubts, you can directly contact me on the email given below, byk.sindekar@gmail.com, or my phone number 9890207692. I hope that this presentation on money and money supply will definitely help you to understand the concept of money, banking. So this was really in brief or in nutshell. So if you want to have something more, you can again visit again and again to my YouTube channel to learn more concepts about the economics and policies. So thank you very much.